Hi, and welcome to Behind the Scenes with Axiom Medical. I'm your host, Jason McElhinney. If this is your first time joining us, this is a bi-weekly episode where we go behind the scenes at Axiom Medical and we introduce you to the people that make this company tick. And on this particular episode, we have a relatively newer employee, Dr. Les Kertay, who is the Senior VP of Behavioral Health. How are you doing, Dr. Kertay?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and talking to us about who you are, what makes you tick, and what your role is in the company. And I was wondering if you could kind of give everybody that's watching a little bit of a background of who you are.
Sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I recently realized that I now have to say that I've been in mental health in some form or fashion for almost 45 years. I've spent the last 20 years really mostly in corporate environments, working in disability medicine and disability insurance, workers' compensation. I really have a passion for workplace mental health, and that's why I came to Axiom to help Axiom incorporate more behavioral health awareness into what we do. So that's the short version.
Great. And how long have you been with Axiom Medical now?
I started consulting actually back in March or April of last year. I started full-time October the 18th.
Fantastic. And I know, the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis when we talk about you and having you join the company, I know everyone's pretty excited to work with you and have you part of the team. So when we talk about mental health, you obviously have a lifetime dealing with mental health. We talk about this pandemic, and we're coming up to 2 years now that we've been dealing with this. Mental health never wasn't a problem. It's always been a problem, but it seems like after the pandemic started, people started to give each other a little bit of leeway about, oh, well, you were late for this and blah, 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 blah. It seems like mental health has kind of jumped into the fray a lot more than it has. Have you seen that?
I have. I certainly think we're talking about it a lot more. It's if you actually look at the progression of numbers of diagnoses, numbers of complaints, people seeking treatment, the pandemic isn't as much of an anomaly as we tend to think it is. It really is just the same curve continuing on. But we're certainly talking about it more. I think it's actually really an opportunity. I don't think our mental health is substantially worse, in other words, but I do think that we're talking about it more, and that's really important. It's important for us to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I'm an open book. I talk to a therapist quite regularly and started to after the pandemic started. And I find it's helped me out just to talk to somebody. There seems to be a sort of feeling that if you need to talk to somebody like a therapist, that you're somehow weaker as a human being. But in actuality, you're sort of stronger, I would say. Do you have any advice for anybody out there that might be struggling with that internal question of, should I talk to somebody? Shouldn't I?
Well, yeah, the first thing is if you're struggling with that question, it's probably a good idea. Because if you're wondering, then there's enough going on that you're asking those kinds of questions. It can't hurt. Here's an important idea, I think, that, stress is everywhere. We're all stressed. There's no such thing as being without stress. And stress isn't necessarily a mental health problem. It's something that you can get help with. It's something you can get resources for. Talking to someone who's a friend, who's a good listener, can be really helpful. Then there are psychological symptoms. We also all are frequently anxious. We sometimes wake up feeling a little depressed. We're having a bad day. We're blue. I mean, you and I, before this, we were just talking about not going anywhere, thanks to the pandemic. I think that we're tending to feel isolated. That may or may not benefit from a therapist, but talking to somebody to see if it would make sense is certainly sensible. And then there are people with really significant psychiatric conditions where I think it's really important. So it's really a spectrum. And what's good about us talking about it, especially in the workplace, is that we can get help at all levels. Having a simple conversation with a coworker can help reduce stress. On the other hand, if you have a significant depressive episode, you can't get out of bed in the morning. You're tearful all the time. You feel hopeless. You're having even passive suicidal ideation. That needs treatment. And treatment will be helpful. I'll say one last thing about that, which is that we shop for everything in the world. We shop for shoes. We don't tend to shop for therapists. And if you find somebody that's not a good fit, go find somebody else. Right? There are lots of us.
Yeah, that's very true. I know in my personal journey to kind of end up talking to a therapist was, how do I address anxiety in my own personal life, and also in the workforce as well, because we're dealing with unprecedented times for the entire world together. We're a collective in this, but the anxiety issue is definitely something that's it's always been prevalent in me, and finding help with that has really kind of it's helped me get past a lot of things. And I have this internal conversation with myself. I'm like, I wish I had dealt with this 30 years ago. Maybe things would have been a little bit differently, but the fact that I've dealt with it is fantastic. So,
right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you and, what makes you tick, what's certain things that you like to do. You don't have to tell us what city you're in, but, where in the world are you?
Where in the world? I'm in the Southeast U.S. I'm in Tennessee. I actually grew up in the Midwest and moved to the South in 1980 and have been here ever since. I really, really like the outdoors. This is a really good place for that, where I am. That we were just talking about it. I used to really like to ride bikes until I had a pretty significant accident. Exactly 5 days before I started. 8 days before I started at Axiom, I had a really significant accident and started anyway. So here I am.
We're lucky that the accident wasn't even more significant than it is.
Absolutely.
But you just kind of kept on going and kept on trucking, and that was fantastic. And we did talk about cycling earlier, and you had that accident. A lot of the people, there's a few people on our team that do the MS 150 here in Texas, but they had to cancel it, I think, last year because of COVID. So we may do that again this year. I don't know if you'll be in riding condition to do that, but put that as something in the future. You can be on the Axiom Medical MS 150 team.
All right.
So besides cycling, besides your work, what else can you tell us about yourself?
I guess the other I suppose I could have mentioned as a hobby that I do photography. That's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm an advanced amateur. Let me put it that way. I'm certainly not a pro.
What do you like to shoot?
Pretty much everything. I'm actually not as good with people as I am with still life, wildlife, landscapes. I'm really good with people when I'm talking to them, and I wish I could capture what I see when I'm talking to people. But capturing that in a camera is harder.
It's tough. It's tough to direct people to give you what you want them to give you.
Yeah. And I'm just not. I don't like. I'm not good enough for my own purposes.
Oh,
You
harsh
know.
critic.
Yeah, well, that comes with the territory, I think.
Yeah.
I have a big family, happily married. Right now, we're down to a half child at home, so almost an empty nest. She's finishing college, and so
Fun.
our children now are 4 dogs.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I have a couple of those children
yeah.
that are thankfully not in here. They were barking just before we went live, but thankfully they're not there anymore. Photography, you're talking my language. I love photography. I've been taking photos for years and years and years. I love taking photos of people, but I do more like street photography or kind of in the background in group settings where I can just take photos of people. I also do concert photography as well. And
nice.
I love photos.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I have a wall of my stuff over here. So.
Oh, we'll have to get a photo of that sometime. You'll have to show us. I'd love to see. I'd love to see some of your photography. We can trade links after the call.
All right, happy to do it.
So, what does the new year bring to you? What's 2022 look like for Dr. Kertay?
Well, I'm really excited about what we're doing at Axiom. I mean, the idea of building a workplace behavioral health program that makes sense, that's cost effective for employers, that really helps employees. These are ideas I've been kicking around for 15 years and just never really had a chance to work with a team that was, I think, really capable of being inventive, trying things out, seeing what we can make work. So I'm very excited about that. This is, this is kind of like a dream job for me. It's like, and we'll find out if I'm right. I've had a lot of theories about workplace mental health for a long time. So now it's time to put them into action.
Well, from what we've seen from you and all the other people that I know that work with you, have meetings with you, I think we're all pretty happy that you're on board, and we're excited to see where this is going to take us. I was joking. We were in a meeting yesterday with you, and you jumped off, and I was joking with some of the other people. Like, every time I'm on a call with Les, I feel like I'm getting free therapy. It's just fantastic because you're always dropping in these like amazing little words of wisdom that seems so easy. Why didn't I think of that?
I had an experience once with one of our middle children, our son, who he had an argument with his mom, and I just took him out for a walk around the long block to kind of give him a hand. And when we got back to the driveway, he said, it's really hard talking to you. It's like, you're a psychologist. Like, talking to a psychologist who's a dad. I said, I don't think you understand. I'm not like this because I'm a psychologist. I became a psychologist because I'm like this. So most of that stuff that you hear from me is not really me being a shrink. It's me. It's me being me. So
it's you being
psychology, yeah. And being a psychologist was the perfect fit for me. So you
just have that natural ability to drop, pearls of wisdom here and there.
Maybe more important, I also know. And this is a learned skill. I learned to listen.
True. So, yeah, that is a good skill. Well, let's jump to some comments that people have left here. Some of these are quite long. So Christy says that's what makes Axiom Medical the best. I see how mental health is an issue, especially during the pandemic, and having you part of the team. So that's fantastic.
That's great.
And she also left another message saying the conversation of mental health has always been taboo, sweeping under the carpet. But now, especially now with COVID and all, you're helping to open the door. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. And she says to follow you on LinkedIn because you share a lot of great articles with your narrative. And that's true. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, please check out Dr. Kertay on LinkedIn. He's very informative, lots of great stuff.
Thanks.
And Chitra says, very informative. Thanks for sharing your views on stress and depression. And you have a fellow Tennessean, Claire, who's on our team. Tennessee is beautiful.
It is. Yep. Yeah. Claire's just right up the road.
Yeah, and we also have another person on our team who's also in Tennessee, Aaron. I've been to Tennessee many times, driven through it many times. I've always liked that area of the states. The rural parts of it is just beautiful.
It's interesting. I guess an interesting comment on Axiom as a place to work is that, we've all, in some ways, in the last couple of years, we've gotten used to working virtually and being on Zoom meetings, and everybody's had to get used to it. I've worked virtually because I've had multi-state teams that I've worked with before, and that I've led. But there's something about, Axiom has really built a culture where people connect with one another on a really regular basis. And that's, if I had advice for anybody around COVID, and especially now that we're really getting to the place where we're all sick of it, we're all really tired.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all really stressed about being isolated, but making sure that you connect with people is really important. And I think is a huge stress reliever. And, if you're stressed about looking at yourself on the camera, turn the camera off and just talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay too. Remember when we used to use phones for actually talking on the phone instead of texting?
Oh, yeah. Sitting there like this for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, we do definitely have the culture of connecting and communicating with people. And I don't know about other teams, but especially on our team, we say, like, if you're not understanding the words that someone is typing, just ask them to jump on a quick phone call or a video call to talk it out, rather than going back and forth over and over and over again. And I worked remotely for 5 years, a bunch of years ago. And so I had that ingrained in me, that conversation, keep the conversation going. Of course, back then we used Google Chat instead of,
Right.
Teams or other video platforms. So it's great. When we went remote, prior to that, we wouldn't have been able to necessarily bring a person like you in. We would have to find someone that was closer to the office. But now that we're remote, our opportunities to bring in like highly skilled and qualified people are limitless now.
Yeah. I think it's made a big difference. I used to have a rule when I was chief medical officer of a large disability carrier. I had a rule for people who work for me that if you never make a phone call, if you could walk to somebody's desk and never send an email if you could make a phone call. Right.
Yeah.
I think email has killed a lot of our connections. It's time to get over that.
Yeah, there's no way of telling nuance. I always joke and say, if you want to be sarcastic, use the Comic Sans font. But it's hard to read nuance in emails.
Please no.
That's funny. Let's show a couple more comments. Irene says a great way to start the new year with mental health. Dr. Kertay, would you share what signs to look for of anxiety and depression in the workplace, or what are some recommendations you might have?
Around anxiety, I think the biggest sign is if you find yourself repetitively thinking about something and it's getting in the way of your ability to function well, that's an anxiety that, either you need to step away and de-stress, and if that's not enough and it continues to happen or it keeps you awake at night, it's worth looking at, talking to somebody to see if you can make that better. I think the same about depression, but it's a little different feeling. I said earlier, we all have bad days, but a depressive disorder is more than a bad day. A depressive disorder is a lack of motivation and a sense of hopelessness that interferes with function. So that's the key theme. If it's getting in the way of you doing what you want to do, it's worth doing something about it.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, we all have fleeting anxieties, but that's not a problem. Anxiety is not the problem. Anxiety disorders are the problem.
Yeah.
And, same with stress. Stress isn't the problem, but being stressed enough that it gets in your way, that's an issue.
Oh, definitely. And anxiety can be a good thing. It can be something that, that helps you to be better and whatnot. But depressive disorders and anxiety disorders are a whole different ball of wax. And you're not any weak of a person to try to find help with that.
Absolutely not. I mean, if you have diabetes, you either take medicine, you adjust your diet, you adjust the amount of exercise you get, you take insulin, you do something about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't we do that about mental health?
For sure. And that leads me into the next comment from Autumn. This is a long one as well, but basically saying that, removing the stigma around this is very important. And she also threw out the 1-800-662-HELP number.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone is feeling down or depressive, you can give that number a call. It's confidential. It's free. It's always there.
Thanks for putting that out there, Autumn. That's good.
Now let's get to a couple more comments here. So we have Tiffany Diane, who is on our team in Axiom. So it's truly been great working with Dr. Kertay. Love what we are doing and breaking the mold for mental health. And
awesome.
Then Holly says, exciting times, Axiom. Big things on the horizon with Dr. Kertay at the wheel. And
Holly has a lot of faith in me.
Well, I don't know if it's faith. It's just, when we hear you talk and we're in meetings, we're like, okay, that guy's definitely on the ball. So, and then we got one last comment from Dara. It looks like she's thrown down the gauntlet here. She says a photography off, an exhibit of Axiom photographers. So we'll have to get a gallery together of all the other people in the company that take photos.
All right.
All right. So anything else you want to add, Dr. Kertay?
No, I don't think so. Mental health is health. I think I'm really glad that phrase popped up. I think that's it's true on all sorts of levels. I mean, we're talking about individuals, but we could also be talking about employers.
Mm-hmm.
We know that when mental health is available to employees, overall health spending goes down. We know that. We've demonstrated that time and time again. There's less time away from work that people have to be gone. There are all kinds of benefits that it affects individuals, it affects employers, it affects society. I mean, it's just a huge potential impact from paying attention to, everything from I'm a little overstressed and I need a break to I have a significant psychiatric condition that requires treatment. Getting that treatment makes everything better for everybody.
It really does. Yeah. That's a great insight. And honestly, that's a kind of a great thing to end on. So Dr. Kertay, I appreciate you taking some time out today to talk with us and letting us get to know you. And we have one more comment from Holly. She says glamour shots. So next time you're in Houston, you're going to have to take some glamour shots of the team, apparently.
Apparently, yeah. Probably not a good idea.
All right, Dr. Kertay, well, thank you for dropping by. And for everybody else watching, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.